A hysteric woman burst through the door of the hospital room. Dr. James Stemmer was in the middle of refilling the IV of a comatose man when she interrupted him. The woman kept going on and on about her daughter. She demanded that he be the one to treat her daughter, and she be given the largest, most private room in the hospital. Her speech was barely comprehensible through her sobbing. The woman was told during the ambulance ride that Stemmer was the best educated, most experienced doctor in the hospital, which is why she pleaded for only his help. Stemmer got even more flustered when some fellow doctors wheeled in the daughter of the woman on a stretcher. She was naked. A corpse. She appeared to be deceased. She just lay there, eyes closed, her face rid of any color. Stemmer got them a private room, at least for right now, so he could sort out exactly what was going on. The mother, Eliza, had just moved here with her daughter Joelle to open a private practice mortuary in the basement. But the daughter was diagnosed with a blood clot in her brain, and she died right after the move. Eliza was too distraught to report or confirm the death. Joelle had just collapsed on the floor one day while eating a bowl of soup. Being a mortician, of course, Eliza could easily recognize a dead body, and recognized her daughter as one. After a day of grieving, naturally, Eliza brought Joelle to her basement to embalm her. Just before Eliza was going to make the first incision, Joelle sat up and yelled at her, then fell back down. Stemmer tried to explain that sometimes corpses can move on their own for an instance, due to energy remaining in the body. Eliza said that was not the case. She said Joelle literally sat up and yelled straight in her face. Maybe Eliza was just a little crazy and hallucinated this. Regardless of her sanity, Stemmer tested to see if Joelle had any more signs of life. Her eyes would not dilate when he pulled open the lids and shined light in them. There was no heartbeat, and there was no breathing. Above all, her body was unmistakably, undeniably, uncomfortably stiff. Stemmer assured Eliza that her daughter was, unfortunately, deceased. Eliza denied this, saying that all those signs were present before Joelle sat up. She demanded brain surgery to fix Joelle's clot and the appropriate treatment to make her better, in the best room with Stemmer, the best doctor. Before he could respond saying that Eliza should undergo psychological testing, she informed him that she was loaded with money from her husband, who'd passed away years before. She whipped out a wad of cash from her purse and flashed it in front of his face. Stemmer instinctually said yes as soon as he saw the money, before even analyzing the situation. He set Eliza up in a hospital room, and she finally started to calm down. But of course, Stemmer was skeptical. Did Joelle really sit up? Did she really die from a brain clot? Was this girl even this woman's daughter? He only became more confused when Eliza showed him all their identification and some scans of Joelle's brain with the clot. This proved that at least some of what she was saying was true. He proceeded to operate on Joelle, just like Eliza wanted, and removed the clot. He used the same procedures he would on a normal patient. All the machines monitoring her vital signs reported nothing. The thick purple blood wasn't even flowing through the clotted vein he operated on. Following the operation, Stemmer gave Joelle the same recovery care as any other vegetable, with several IVs and monitoring systems. She had some staples in her head, and some of her hair was shaved. By the time all this was settled, it was late, so Eliza kissed her daughter goodbye in the forehead, not even acknowledging the cool stiffness of her flesh against the lips. Eliza went home for the night. Days passed, and Joelle continued to stay in her room as Eliza gladly shoveled more and more money to Stemmer, hoping her daughter would show signs of change. She changed all right, but not for the better. Her skin developed a moist green tinge, and her eyes sunk deeper into the sockets. Her hair stayed intact, but her nose and ears shriveled like old fruit slices. The flesh surrounding the staples from her operation became like brown sludge. Her nails turned brown, and her lips turned purple and crinkled like grape skin. Her body was still stiff and hard like fake wood. That's what she was. Fake. Fake life. Eliza acknowledged Joelle's condition, so she couldn't be completely crazy. But every night she would still kiss her daughter's corpse and then return home to prepare other corpses for the cemetery. For days now, Joelle's blood had been completely dried up and the IV fluids weren't able to pass through her. But Stemmer still kept her hooked up to the contraptions just to make Eliza happy. Joelle reeked. The fumes of her rotting corpse dominated the room. Eliza held her nose. Stemmer had to wear a mask whenever he was in there. He could just picture all the bacteria inside her devouring her organs, decaying her, rotting all her bodily tissues. He could picture all the stiffness inside her turning to vomit-colored speckled goop, and as the tissues lost mass, bones were brought closer to the surface, revealing themselves through the skin. Her joints were swollen bulges, while the rest of her limbs were leather-covered metal rod. Stemmer could only imagine the pockets in the bone marrow increasing as the fibers decomposed. Once a living girl, warm with life, now remained as an inanimate object that he could break with the tiniest strong move. Her cheekbones rose from her wrinkled face like obscure mountains, and her jaw created coves underneath. Dark coves, dank coves. Her patient gown seeped through her ribs. Weeks later, on a late afternoon, Eliza came in to kiss her daughter goodnight. She approached the bed, seeing again the pile of dust surrounding Joelle. But she knew it wasn't really dust. It was flakes. Death flakes. She looked at Joelle's face and the pile of hair surrounding her head, which now more closely resembled a skull. She peered into her daughter's eyes, which had liquefied long ago, sticking the lids shut. She leaned forward and kissed her daughter on the forehead, just like she had on every single night before. "Tastes salty," she said. She draped some of her own hair over Joelle's face. "How pretty," she said. Stemmer, who was standing behind her, put his hand on her shoulder. She stood up, her hair taking along some death flakes with it. Stemmer was satisfied with the riches he had been given. He told Eliza it was time to say goodbye for good. Eliza nodded. To ease any doubts about Joelle's death, he would inject her IV with a serum that would demolish any life left in her. Eliza's eyes began to water as Stemmer retrieved the serum from the cabinet. He took some of it up in a needle. Eliza buried her face in her hands. Stemmer approached Joelle's IV, holding his breath even under his mask to avoid breathing in the stench. As soon as he inserted the needle into the IV, his heart stopped. Joelle's skeletal fingers grabbed her bedsheets. Her limp back shot up, one vertebrae at a time, and her head sprung up using the momentum her body had supplied. Her eyelids opened, spurting crusted liquid that once made up her eyeballs. Her non-existent lips opened to say in a voice that resembled air whistling through straw, "I'm alive!" Then she collapsed back in her bed as Stemmer collapsed on the floor with shock. 3 days later, Eliza set up her tools in her mortuary to prepare James Stemmer's corpse. It was a real shame. Joelle had given him such a fright when she sat up. It scared him right to death. Oh well, he was such a good doctor, helping so many patients, except, of course, Joelle. Eliza adjusted her blood-stained apron and put on her gloves and goggles. She cleared her throat and retrieved the first tool. It was a tube with a needle at the end to stick in the jugular vein and suck all the blood out. She looked at his naked body, so peaceful amongst her sharp metal instruments, strange jars of chemicals, strange empty jars to hold things she removes from bodies, and her toe tag collection. She aimed her needle at Stemmer's neck. Suddenly he shot up, arms out, eyes popping from his head. "Don't do it!" he screeched. Before he could even fall back down, Eliza stabbed him violently right in the jugular vein. After preparing Stemmer's body, she removed her apron and went upstairs to feed Joelle some soup. Joelle's chair at the table had many death flakes around it.